So we are going to continue reading our story from The Rivers Rising and our textbook today. So we will open up to that page in just a moment. Actually, start opening up to page 16. I'm going to go over some words that we might not know in our story for the day. So listen to this sentence. The mooring lines kept the boat from floating downstream. Mooring lines are any permanent structure to which a vessel may be secured. So mooring lines is where they tied it to something to keep the boat from moving, okay? A current is a strong moving water flow, okay? The 4 lanes of traffic moved to 1 lane, creating a bottleneck. A bottleneck means like a jam, right? Have you ever seen, if you guys rode it with your parents on the interstate and you come to where a bunch of lanes meet and then causes traffic? That's a bottleneck. The debris of the bombed city lay everywhere. Debris is like rubble or broken pieces of buildings or anything like that. That's debris, okay? While swimming underwater, my body was completely submerged. Submerged means covered, right? Yep. Does that make sense? All right, is everyone on page 16? Okay, we are going to start reading. Remember, if I pause and I look up, say the word with me. Or you say the word that I stopped at, page 16, okay? Shifting current. Josh and Pa spent the rest of the morning securing everything on the houseboat. Anything that might tip over or fall was lashed down. Loose things were taken inside to be stored. Pa went over every inch of the houseboat. He was checking the roof to see if it needed any repair work when the sheriff called from the bank. So, not from the bank, like where you keep your money, but from shore. Okay? Hello, Fowlers. He nodded in approval when he saw the boat secured to the tree. Glancing at the water that now covered the landing, he said, "Looks like you're all set for a while." "Reckon so," Pa replied. You okay? Reaching out a hand to help the sheriff aboard. "How's things going?" The sheriff nodded at Ma and ruffled Josh's hair. He grinned when Josh ducked. "If your family's going to be all right for a while, I could use your help," he said to Pa. "The lower part of the town's already flooded, and the farms north of us are half buried underwater. We need every man we can get that knows the river. We've got to bring those people to high ground." Pa nodded. "Been expecting that. My boat's secure, and my people will be all right." After the sheriff had left, Pa kissed Ma and Buddy and motioned for Josh to follow him to the back of the houseboat. "The water's rising faster than I've ever seen it," he said quietly. "There's going to be a lot of people stranded, and I won't be back anytime soon. You have to take care of Ma and Buddy." Josh swallowed. "We'll be all right, Pa." So Josh swallowed there, but he sounded confident. Do you think he really was confident? No, that swallowing hard shows that he's a little nervous, right? "Just remember to check the mooring lines," Pa said as he untied the rowboat. "The current is sweeping close to shore." "Okay, Pa," Josh said. He went back to stand beside Ma and Buddy. They waved until Pa rowed out of sight. The rest of the day dragged by. Ma went about her work quietly, and Josh could tell she was praying for Pa and the people caught in the flood. Even Buddy played quietly, running his wooden train around the braided rug. Josh checked the water every hour, and every hour he shook his head at Ma's look. "Still rising," he said at last. "It's over the high banks now." Night came, and Pa was still gone. At supper time, Mom wordlessly handed the Bible to Josh. He read a chapter slowly, stumbling over some of the words. Then he tried to pray as his father did, speaking to the Lord as a friend. Supper time was quiet. The fish and cornbread were soon removed from the table, almost untouched. Josh checked the mooring lines again while Ma did the dishes. He held the lantern high, peering toward the bank. The water was more than a foot over the bank now, churning around the roots of the old oak. Pieces of the broken branches tumbled over the landing and swept under the mooring lines. The water was too far over the landing. It was too for it to offer any protection to the houseboat. "Oh, Pa," Josh thought, "come home." He went back inside and set a lamp down on the table. Ma touched his arm gently. "The Lord will take care of us," she said quietly. When Buddy was asleep, Ma sat down beside Josh. "Like me to read to you?" she asked, picking up David Copperfield. Josh nodded, knowing that neither of them would sleep until Pa came home. Ma read page after page, but still there was no homecoming shout from the river. Unexpectedly, the house trembled under them, rocking the water. Ma stopped reading. Josh reached for the lamp and stepped outside, holding the lamp up. He looked at the mooring lines. They were only inches above the rising water that reached out into the night. The current had shifted, pulling them away from the trees. "A branch must have tangled for a moment," Josh called back to Ma. He had turned to go back inside when a grinding crash came from the direction of the submerged landing. He spun around, heart thudding. A large shape had lunged out of the night and smashed into the landing. Josh held his breath, listening to the crackling and grinding. Then there was a splintering noise. "The landing's breaking up," he cried. "Come inside now." Ma grabbed his arm and pulled him back inside, slamming the door behind him. The houseboat shuddered as the broken mast hit the back of the boat. Then, with a jerk, the boat began to move. Josh stared at Ma. "The line's broke. We're loose." "The current'll take us to midstream," she said, her face pale. "We'll just drift downriver." Josh's eyes met hers for a moment before he looked away. 5 miles downriver's cliff crowded the edge on both sides. Tonight the cliffs would form a bottleneck for the rushing water and floating debris. There was no way off the river. He couldn't take the boat across the fields. It would be wrecked on submerged fences and sheds. What could they do? Josh's mind stretched his memory of the river for an answer. All right, leave it on that page. So, what happened here was they were in the boat and part of the landing, so part of the bank, the shore, started breaking off from all the water. Okay? So it started breaking off and it hit the boat and it broke the mooring lines that was holding them to the tree. And so now they're floating downriver, right? So Ma, Josh, and Buddy are in the houseboat floating downriver. And Josh is thinking, okay, I can't take the boat this way because if we end up on land, then it'll hit covered fences and things like that we can't see. So he's thinking, okay, what do I remember is down this way of the river that I can try to get us connected to? Does that make sense? This is where we are stopping for today. I want you guys to put this book away and get out your workbook. Okay? Go to page 8 in your workbook. Go to page 8. It's going to say Trouble on the River at the top. Alright, so it says Trouble on the River. Josh looked at the mass of broken branches along the shore and sighed. He got a rack from the bait house and began raking the debris into large piles. About noon, he heard a boat chugging across the water towards Fowler's Landing. He shaded his eyes. It was Captain Jack, halfway to the landing. The chugging faltered, then stopped. The boat began to drift with the current. "Need any help?" Josh called. "No," Captain Jack shouted back. "I'll use the sail." So this isn't from our story today. This is kind of like an add-on to this story. Does that make sense? So this isn't from what we read today, and it's not really covering anything for the next little bit, but it's kind of like an add-on, okay?
What page is it?
8. The captain moved forward in the boat as Josh watched. A flutter of white appeared above the boat. The sail slid quickly up the mast. Captain Jack returned to his former position near the motor. As the boat turned, he reached for a rope. The wind caught the sail. Captain Jack pulled it tight, and the boat leaned into the wind. A short while later, the boat reached the landing. Captain Jack tossed the mooring line to Josh. When the boat was secure, he climbed up beside Josh. "Should have known better," he said, shaking his head. "I ran across a submerged log while I was trying to reach the south end of Crab Island. I reckon I damaged the motor." "It's a good thing you didn't get rid of the sail when you put in the engine on your boat," Josh said. "Yep," the captain agreed. "Every time something goes wrong with the engine, I give thanks for that old sail. Don't ever get so caught up with the newfangled notions that you forget the old ways, Josh." So, the sail, you guys have seen probably pictures of sailboats or even big old ships that they had big white sails at the top, right? Well, Captain Jack put a motor in his boat a while back, but he kept the sail in case of an emergency. Because if he didn't, and his motor gave out like it just did, he would be stranded and not have a way to control his boat, right? So, what you guys are going to do, you are doing this on your own, and then you are going to be turning it in. So you'll rip this page out in a moment, put your name on it, and turn it in. Do you guys see down at the bottom? It says number 1, fast flowing water. Do you see the blue box? It says to read the story and match each word with the definition. Write the letter on the correct post. Do you see the little post next to each letter? It's just a little piece of wood.
Yes.
It's just like a little almost circle. I'll show you in a second, okay? Does everyone else see it?
Yes.
That is where you will put the letter of the correct word. Okay? Does that make sense? So, any questions? Alright, look back at the story to figure out the word's meaning if you don't know it. And then make sure your name is on it and turn it into the reading tray or turn it into the assignment online under reading. Thanks.